Hello and welcome to my easy to understand guide to Marcus Rashford online media and representation. This video is going to be particularly relevant for you if you are studying AQA GCSE media studies, as Marcus Rashford currently appears as a set product on that specification. So it's important to have had a look at a wide range of Marcus Rashford's online social media products and also his website in order to be able to tackle questions on this. I have obviously looked at his social media and website at a particular time on a particular day, and it changes regularly. So please don't panic if you look at his social media or website and see different things. As long as you are talking about relevant items, relevant products, relevant representations, that's the most important thing. And you can apply anything I say to any other content on his online media products. Obviously, there is a focus on football, sport, and his status, and that is because he is obviously known as a sports star, and that is where a lot of his fan base come from. Of course, lots of his posts on his social media are things that other people have tweeted and have tagged him in. So, for example, Manchester United have tagged him in a lot of videos that then appears on his newsfeed, and that was things like videos of his goals, slow motion of his celebrations, something really to show and represent him as being quite skilled and successful. I saw several images of children reading his book, and that kind of suggests that he's a role model, that he's successful, that young people look up to him. There's also quite positive representations of children and young people as well. It's showing them as being quite literate, quite clever, and quite educated. He runs a book club as well that he's kind of a patron of, and that again sets him up as being a kind of leader, an icon, a role model, somebody that is there to educate children. He tags a number of celebrities in his posts and often features them within pictures and videos too. So for example, I saw posts that featured Ed Sheeran, Elton John, for example. Repeated use of celebrities in posts creates the idea that Rashford is successful, popular, and is endorsed by other famous celebrities. He also tags the Trussell Trust, try saying that quickly, in a lot of his products, a lot of his posts, and that is an organisation that helps to run all the food banks in the UK, and that is because he does a lot of charity work and is involved with the Trussell Trust a lot, so trying to promote some of the charity work that he does too. He seems to share a lot of local stories from places like Romford, Millwall, perhaps suggests that, that he wants to embrace and celebrate local culture, the places where he comes from, the places where he lives, or the places where he grew up. There's lots of mentions of other working class places and locations as well. So for example, specific hospitals, specific schools, specific streets, very much focusing on working class areas and issues. Perhaps this is because a lot of football fans are from working class backgrounds. Perhaps it's because he is from a working class background. But it certainly helps to engage working class audiences who are often particularly the people that suffer from the poverty and other financial issues that he's campaigning against. It suggests quite working class attitudes towards life, and that he embraces and feels part of that working class life. He's not afraid to be political. A lot of stars often avoid this on social media, but Marcus Rashford openly focuses on it. So he will call out things like the NHS, he will call out the government, he will talk about things like inequality. For example, I saw him posting about the NHS Healthy Start campaign and about how calls to this weren't free for people and how this might affect impoverished families. In the past, he's called out the government, tagged prime ministers and other MPs and asked them to do more to help families that are suffering financially. So really representing him as being somebody who's very interested in politics and somebody who's very committed to actively campaigning for change. Although football is often thought of as a typically very kind of like macho industry, and we often hear about football hooligans, football thugs, etc., the representations of football and footballers and as a sport and a hobby is very positive in general on Marcus Rashford's social media and other online products. And obviously that's because he is a footballer. He wants to promote his sport as being positive. But also it represents men in a slightly counter-typical way. There's images of lots of men hugging, getting very emotional. There's like heart emojis and things. So perhaps suggesting that men are actually quite emotional beings, which is quite an unconventional representation, but also that football is actually a very supportive and positive community. It's interesting to have a look at how Marcus Rashford's products represent women as well. His emotional and caring representations of men extend to the way that he represents women. Marcus Rashford repeatedly posts about his own mother with some really kind of loving and caring words and images to do with her. He mentions International Women's Day and talks about how important the women in his life are. It represents her as being an incredibly important person to him and perhaps being one of the reasons why he's so successful today. He also repeatedly posts about the female football team for England, including their huge successes in the last couple of years, really cheering them on and celebrating them and their talent. And so his posts feel reasonably inclusive. Obviously, there is much more of a focus on male dominated activities, lots more men in his posts than women, and perhaps that's reflective of the fact that football generally does tend to be a male dominated sport. But at least there is some representation there of women, and the representations that are there are quite positive and showing women in positions of power and success. There's a huge use of English symbolism within his posts and his website. So, for example, there's the use of the England flag's colours. There's the use of poppies, for example. It's very patriotic. It's there to represent him as being very British. He mentions the royal family a lot. So really trying to connote him as being part of British culture and very supportive of Britain as a country. And this may be because he is very patriotic. Content warning, the following section discuss issues of racism within football, and I do show some screenshots of tweets that Marcus Rashford and other footballers received online. The tweets are censored, but could still cause offence. It may be there also to counteract some of the very negative attitudes from some audiences towards black players, whereby they get treated in very racist and discriminatory ways, with often quite kind of xenophobic comments that suggest that they aren't part of England or they aren't part of Britain. So perhaps all this patriotic imagery is there to try and reinforce his British status. He's also not afraid to highlight when he has been the victim of online hate and when other players and celebrities have been the victims as well. So he will often retweet, reshare or comment on posts that have included things like racism, sexism, homophobia, etc. Again, showing him as being quite inclusive. And perhaps because of his own ethnic background and because of the online hate that he and other black footballers have suffered, he often represents young black people in a really positive light on his social media. Obviously, the stereotypes in the media associated with young black men are quite negative. We often see representations of young black men involved in crime and antisocial behaviour, and yet the representations of youth, and in particular black young men in Britain, are hugely positive across his online products. Lots of representations of young black men in positions of power, success, people being caring and united, and so challenging representations of ethnicity by portraying really positive representations here. His MBE is mentioned several times on the website and also in some of his social media posts as well, and that is obviously to promote him as being very successful, as achieving, as somebody that has been awarded for their commitments to both sport and outside sport. A lot of his fans react really well to these representations, but it is important to have a look at some of the comments and posts that perhaps aren't as positive in terms of the way he represents himself and issues. So, for example, there are still some audiences, unfortunately, who are commenting with racial comments, with hate. There are also people who comment about him virtue signalling, i.e. trying to represent himself as being kind of socially good, just for the sake of it, rather than they think he doesn't actually care, basically. So not everyone's going to react well to these representations, and there's quite a variety of comments that you can see online. So that was my easy to understand guide to Marcus Rashford's online media and representation. Don't forget to check out my channel for other videos about Marcus Rashford and the other set texts that might be relevant for you. And if you've got a video that you would like that I don't already have, leave a little comment below and I'll see what I can do.